Tourism and Infrastructure Committee that was created approximately 10 months ago by Nevada Governor Brian Sandoval and has an expiration date just after the 31st of July of this year. Now, I was going to not make a statement on this for a bit, but because of your urging, here it is. First of all, to those who have been constant haters, if you will, and attacking me on a daily basis, actually several times a day, I say this: I told you so, and I have no problem saying to you, I told you so, and I have no problem saying to you, I was right. I said in videos, in fact, on my one video where I said that the SNTIC stadium action item was not on the agenda, it was not. And 2 minutes and 58 seconds into that video, I told you about the discussion period that would be held where they would discuss stadium alternatives. That happened. I also told you a number of times and in detail in a couple of videos that the SNTIC would seek a lower funding request, a lower one, than the $750 million, and I explained why. That happened as well. Now, what I witnessed from my Facebook Live position was the meltdown of Oakland Raiders president Mark Badain. Badain blew a gasket, and in so doing, he showed, not just he, but his colleagues representing Las Vegas Sands and Majestic Realty showed that collectively they're not ready for prime time with respect to negotiating the stadium deal. What happened was that when Badain got word that from SNTIC Chairman Hill that the alternative proposal, remember, no action has been taken, this alternative proposal was at $550 million, he said this is not acceptable, it's not good news for the Raider organization, and we are very disappointed with what we have seen out of this group. And that last statement was not something that should ever have come out of Badain's mouth, but it did. And Mark Badain, in acting the way that he did, showed that, yes, he might have 25 years with the Raiders, but he played with the Al Davis playbook of the 20th century, which says, I'm going to dominate you. That's fine on the playing field. That may have worked in the scenario of trying to leave Oakland because of luxury box issues and other issues with the Coliseum for Los Angeles and then coming back. But in the 21st century, it pisses people off, and very powerful people who are not friends of the Raiders try to figure out ways around them. So it's no wonder that the Raiders have been, for want of a better term, punked in Carson, and now it looks like they're going to get punked in Las Vegas. But Las Vegas is a lot smoother, all right? In the Las Vegas sense, the Las Vegas people are doing what the NFL does. It's a kind of a practice of negotiating and treating people that goes back to Pete Rozelle, the first commissioner of the NFL. They nice you to death. Yeah, your death, not theirs. They don't tell you right off they don't want you. They ease you into the idea that, hey, this isn't going to work out in your favor. It's going to work out in theirs. They're going to give you something, but it's not going to be what you want, and they're going to make you feel good about it all the way along the process. And that's what Las Vegas is doing. To consider this. First of all, the main problem is that Badain went in without a plan B, without a scenario. He should have known that was coming. I told you it was coming. Mark, who's been the president for just over a year, acted like he didn't know it was coming and had no plan B. That's not the way you engineer that at all. You go to negotiation, you know what to expect, and you have contingencies planned for the unexpected, but you expect the unexpected and in detail what that unexpected is. And again, I predicted it. If I predicted it, Badain and his charges could have as well. They did not. And their reaction was evident that they did not do that. Instead, what the Raiders did was they left it to the government to have answers for them. For example, As Stephen Hill pointed out in the 23rd session yesterday, there was not a real number for land costs. So they basically guessed. They came up with one. The Raiders had done nothing to help them along, and more important, neither did Las Vegas Sands or Majestic Realty, two other organizations that you think would not allow the Raiders to be essentially thrown under the bus. But that's what happened. And then, on top of all that, consider this, that the Sheldon Adelson grabbed Mark Davis, essentially, psychologically, and threw him to the wolves of Las Vegas politics against some very big players with their own high stakes. So here comes Mark Davis wanting to bring the Raiders into Las Vegas, thinking that he is going to get $750 million just because he is Mark Davis, represents the Raiders in the National Football League. What he forgot, or wasn't aware of, frankly, and it's quite obvious that he wasn't aware of it, and not only was not he not aware of it, but Mark Bedane didn't make him aware of it, at least by his actions, is that the Las Vegas Convention Center expansion, which has been on the table for a long time, is spearheaded by the Las Vegas Convention Center, which gets its money from what? Its operating money from hotel tax revenue. And it serves the interests of very powerful business and political players. Among them that might seem to be on Sheldon Adelson's side, like Stephen and Wynn, other casino owners, but will just as easily tilt over to, you guessed it, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Bureau, because having conventions feeds hotel revenues, which is their lifeblood. Okay, so what happened in that sense, in this scenario, is that, and this goes with Las Vegas style of nicing you to death. Here comes the Raiders, and yet they want to tap into a hotel tax that has been assigned to the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Bureau for the activities that I mentioned. You think that not just the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Bureau, or the LVCB, is going to just sort of give that up willingly, let alone its business interests, without some sort of fight? Of course not. But in perfect Las Vegas political style, they're not going to make it look like a knife fight. They're bringing their knives, but they're invisible. And they're cutthroat. And they will cut you to death. They will ease you in to what you think you want. And at the end of the day, you'll say, okay, gee, I don't know, I want that, but God, it's so nice. And we're going to keep talking. Yeah, right. Of course. Here's where the Raiders made their mistake. They, as they've done in Oakland fashion and every other city they've paid attention to, they let the government do the work. And as I said before, Las Vegas Sands and Majestic basically threw the Raiders under the bus by not doing any work. And what does that work? They don't know what the land costs are. They don't know what the infrastructure costs are. And they don't know what the stadium cost overruns will be. The land costs they don't know because they don't have a site. Okay? No site's been picked out. No site picked out. No negotiations. No even researching of listings or talking with brokers to find out what the land costs might be so you have a good ballpark. None of that. So they guessed, they being the SNTIC consultants, not the Raiders or Las Vegas Sands, guessed at $50 million. Guessed at $50 million. Then infrastructure cost. Oh, in earlier meetings, the Las Vegas Sands and the Raiders group said, oh, we'll pay that. Not a problem. But you don't know what that's going to be because guess what? You don't have a site. So if the site is someplace that requires the construction of $150 million in a new freeway or roads, you got to pay that. Or if it's $200 million, you got to pay that. And there are at least 2 scenarios in Las Vegas where that's the case, if they're selected. Okay? So, but the Raiders didn't investigate that. They left it again to the government to figure it out for them. The Raiders have forgotten one thing. They're not dealing with friends. They didn't deal with friends in the case of Carson. They deal with people who needed them. They didn't deal with friends in the case of Las Vegas. They're not dealing with them. Dealing with people, with one person who needs them, and with others that, kind of wish that, they were doing this another way. And what is that other way? Entirely private financing. That's the other way. So the bottom line is this: I am really surprised that the kind of managerial actions I've seen from the Raiders in Oakland spilled over into Las Vegas. And after seeing them at play in Carson, the Raiders really have to stop and ask themselves, regardless of the city, how they're planning for a stadium. And really the hard question, do they know what they're doing? My answer is they don't know what they're doing. I know it's a harsh thing to say, but I have the background and the expertise and the maturity to say that. They don't. Okay? And it's time to stop, just avoiding the issue and just cutting right to the chase. They don't. And because if they did, they wouldn't be in the situation that they're in right now. Now you would say, "Oh, Zinni, we're talking about Las Vegas. Aren't you gloating? Aren't you happy?" No, I'm not happy. Because again, we have to deal with this in the Oakland context. So it affects us. It's affected us as well. But now I get a different perspective, right? Different cities and different perspectives, and I can have an even clearer view of what's going on. My prediction is this. First of all, the SNTIC is about to expire, all right? It has an expiration date just after the 31st of July. They're under pressure to come up with a document. Las Vegas Convention Center expansion has been pressed forward, but this is what they have done. And this goes along with my whole point about Vegas nicing them to death. Chairman Hill did something that I didn't even see coming. He said in the meeting that they were going to have a comparison sheet. They were compare the economic impacts of both the stadium and the convention center. Ooh, which means the committee is going to be forced in a way to make a choice of which one is the most economically effective. Whatever happened at that point that they wanted to do both? Think about that. That's the scenario the Raiders didn't want, but that's the scenario that they're in. And it goes back to, what did I say before? The Raiders being eased into this position that they don't want to be in, and all the time it's so nice, and it's so warm, and they're cutting their throats. They don't even realize it. It's not logical for the SNTIC to recommend a stadium whole cloth because there are so many unknowns, and they don't have enough time to work them all out. What I foresee the group doing is suggesting or recommending the creation of kind of an NFL stadium task force to really begin to work out these details. Now, Mark Davis isn't going to like that. Neither is Mark Bedane. Neither Las Vegas Sands or Majestic. But realistically, there isn't enough time to do an effective stadium proposal at that time. And again, the Raiders are asking them to do it. And they're new to this. The SNTIC is new to all this. So the Raiders are not asking them to do all this work, essentially. But guess what? They're new. So they're making mistakes, and they're, figuring out, oh, that was a mistake. We should have factored in this, and okay, we went back. Do you notice how different the explanation was, and the fact that it just came out the night before the presentation as compared to beforehand? Where I pointed out that, hey, in the main area, the SNTIC, the proposal, left out all the revenue figures multiplied times the number of years. Some of you said, oh, it's there, but I told you. I said, look, it's not there. It's 1 year. You don't say 1 year for luxury box revenue, and then think that somebody's going to say, oh, well, I'm going to sit down and get my calculator, I'll multiply it by 30, and I'll figure out what the revenue is myself, and then I'll kind of work this out for you. That's not how it's done, folks. Okay? That's not how it's done. The SNTIC realized that. They went back to the drawing board. They did their homework, figured out that, hey, the Raiders can cough up some more money, so can Las Vegas Sands. They didn't put anything on the Raiders, but in subsequent proposals, they just might do that. They just might do that. Okay? This is not looking good for the Raiders. And the basic reason rests right with the Raiders' own poor style of management in these situations. They act like they're new to it, and it shows, regardless of whether it's Oakland or Carson or Las Vegas?